You want to know why the old ones on my homeworld still lower their voices when they say the word Earth? Sit, I'll tell you, but I'm going to tell it the way it happened, not the way the war priests carved it into the memorial stones. The stones lie. I was there. I saw the truth, and the truth is worse than any story you've been told. My name is Seth. I was a signal keeper aboard the flagship of the 9th Deep Void Armada, and I am, as far as I know, the only one of that fleet who came home. There were 411,000 of us who sailed out. 411,000. Remember that number. It matters later. Let me start with the day the order came down, because that's where it all really begins, not on some battlefield. In a quiet room with a quiet voice on a quiet morning. I was young then, barely past my second molt, proud in that stupid way the young are proud. You think the uniform makes you something. I remember the way my collar plates itched against the new armor. I remember the smell of the flagship's inner decks, that dry metallic tang the recyclers gave the air, a smell I'd grown so used to I only noticed it when I was nervous. I was nervous that day. The whole armada had been pulled back to the Vornaki home fleet anchorage, every ship, and you didn't gather every ship of the 9th Deep Void unless something enormous was about to happen. The lower decks were full of whispers. Some said we were finally going to war with the Korvath. Some said the Ascendancy had found a new world, rich in the black metals we were always starving for. Nobody guessed the truth. Nobody could have. They called the officers to the war hall. I was junior, so I stood at the back near the signal banks, close enough to hear, far enough to be forgotten. Which is exactly how I survived to tell you this, so maybe there's a lesson in it. The warden herself addressed us. Warden Asal Kree. You've seen her statue, I'm sure, the great bronze thing in the Capitol Square, wings spread, eyes like a hunting bird. In life she was smaller than that statue, smaller and colder. She had a way of holding still that made the whole room hold still with her. She said, "We have found a species that must be ended." Just like that, no ceremony. She let the words sit in the air. Then she showed us the world. It came up on the great display, and I'll be honest with you, it was beautiful. A blue and white world, wrapped in clouds, spinning slow. It looked warm. It looked alive in a way our own scorched homeworld hadn't looked in generations. There was an audible sound in the hall, a kind of hungry murmur, when we saw all that water. Water? Do you understand what water meant to us then? We fought wars over frozen comets. We rationed it by the drop on the deep patrols. And here was a whole world drowning in the stuff. The warden let us look, then she said the name. They call themselves humans, and they call the world Earth. Now here's the part the memorial stones don't tell you. We didn't sail to Earth because they attacked us. We didn't sail because they'd wronged us, or threatened us, or done anything to us at all. I want you to understand that, because everything that came after grows out of it like a wound grows infection. The humans had done nothing. The Ascendancy scouts had found them years earlier, a young species, barely off their own moon, spreading out into their little corner of the dark. Weak, divided, squabbling among themselves. The kind of species that in another age we would have simply passed by. But we were dying, you see. That's the part they never carve into bronze. The Vornaki Ascendancy was dying. Our worlds were spent. Our air was thin. Our people were too many and our resources too few, and the great engines of the Empire ran on hunger. We needed worlds, living worlds, and here was one, ripe and blue, and defended by a species that hadn't even fully mapped its own solar system. So the calculation was simple: take it, kill what lives there, move our people in. The warden called it the cleansing of Earth. She made it sound like mercy. She said the humans were too primitive to matter, that their end would be quick, that a species so young could not truly suffer the way a mature people suffered. She said we would be doing the galaxy a kindness by claiming that world before someone crueler did. We believed her. Gods forgive us. We believed her, because it's very easy to believe a comfortable lie when it's dressed in a warrior's language. And to make sure of it, to make absolutely sure, they didn't send a scouting force. They didn't send a raiding party. They sent the 9th Deep Void Armada, the finest fleet the Ascendancy had ever built. Understand what that means. The 9th wasn't just ships. It was the pride of 1,000 years of Vornaki warcraft, 600 vessels, void carriers longer than mountains, the great siege spheres that could crack a planet's crust, weapons that turned oceans to steam. We carried enough firepower to end 100 worlds like Earth, and we were pointing all of it at one. They didn't want a battle, they wanted an erasure. They wanted to arrive at that blue world, and before the humans even understood what was happening, wipe them from existence so completely that no memory of them would survive. I remember standing at my signal bank as we made ready to sail. I remember thinking, and I'm ashamed of it now, but I'll tell you the truth, I remember thinking, poor little things. They'll never even know why. I felt sorry for them. I had no idea, none of us did. The journey to Earth took 11 weeks by the deep fold routes. I want to tell you about those weeks, because they were the last ordinary time any of us would ever have, and I've thought about them more than any other part of my life. The fleet was in high spirits. There's a particular kind of confidence a soldier feels when the enemy is already beaten in his mind, a loose, laughing confidence, the kind that makes men careless. The mess halls were loud. There were songs. Someone in the 3rd Gunnery cohort had smuggled aboard a batch of fermented root liquor and got half the deck sick, and the officers pretended not to notice because morale was good and the war was going to be easy. We told stories about the humans, ugly little stories. We laughed at their soft bodies, their tiny numbers, their pathetic ships that couldn't even leave their own star. We passed around scout images of them, strange, upright, hairless things with 2 flat faces, and we made jokes I won't repeat because they shame me now. There was one image I couldn't stop looking at though. Not a ship, not a weapon. It was a picture the scouts had captured of a human dwelling at night on the dark side of their world. The whole planet was lit up. Cities like scattered embers across the black, rivers of light where their roads ran, great glowing webs where their people gathered. Billions of them down there in the dark, going about their small lives, none of them knowing that 600 ships were sliding through the deep to snuff every one of those lights out. I remember staring at that image and feeling something I didn't have a word for yet. It wasn't pity exactly. It was more like awe maybe. All those lights, all those lives. Every one of them, a whole world of wanting and fearing and loving. And we were coming to end them because we needed their water. I put the image away and told myself not to think about it. A soldier who thinks too much about the lights is no use to anyone. I wish I'd thought harder. We came out of the deep fold at the edge of their star system, and the warden gave the order to form up for the final approach. 600 ships, sliding into attack formation, the great siege spheres at the center like the black heart of a storm. And that's when we got the first strange thing. They knew we were coming. They shouldn't have. Our approach was masked. Our deep fold entry was silent. By every rule of war we understood, the humans should have had no idea we existed until the sky above their cities filled with fire. But as we crossed the outer dark of their system, my signal bank lit up. I was monitoring the wideband channels, the open frequencies, the ones anyone can hear if they know how to listen, and there was a voice on them. A human voice. They'd figured out our channels. Don't ask me how. Their technology was generations behind ours, and yet somehow, in the days between our arrival at the system's edge and our approach, they had reached out and found our frequencies and they were talking to us. I ran the translation. It took a while. Their language was nothing our machines had ever heard. But the machines are patient, and word by word, the message came together. I still remember it, every word. It said, "We know why you're here. We know what you came to do. We're asking you, please, turn around. There is nothing here worth what this will cost you. Turn around and go home, and no one has to die." I brought it to the officer of the watch. He laughed. He actually laughed. He said, "The prey is begging. How touching. Log it and ignore it." And I did. I logged it and I ignored it. But I noticed something in that message that he didn't. He heard begging. I heard something else. There was no fear in that voice. I'd heard fear before. I'd heard the transmissions of worlds we'd broken, the panic screaming, the desperate surrenders. This wasn't that. This voice was calm. They weren't begging for their lives. They were warning us about ours. I didn't understand the difference then. I would. We entered the inner system. The warden's plan was elegant in its way. We would sweep past the outer worlds, a few small human settlements on the cold rocks, easily ignored, and drive straight for Earth. The siege spheres would crack the crust and boil the oceans. The void carriers would sterilize whatever the spheres missed. It would be over in hours. A whole species, ended before their sun had set on the cities the spheres would target first. The first sign that something was wrong came at the outer worlds. They were empty. Not abandoned, empty. The scouts had reported human settlements on the Red World and the Ring Giants' moons, cities, mining stations. Millions of humans spread across the system, but as we passed them our sensors showed us hollow shells. The cities were there. The lights were dark. The humans were gone. All of them. Where do you move millions of people in a matter of days? Where do you hide them from a fleet that can see across a whole star system? You don't. It isn't possible. Unless they hadn't hidden them at all, unless they'd sent them somewhere. I remember the officers arguing about it on the command deck. Some said it was a trick, an evacuation to make us lower our guard. Some said the scout reports had been wrong, that the humans had never been as many as we thought. The warden said it didn't matter. Wherever they'd gone, they'd left Earth behind, and Earth was the prize. Kill the homeworld, and the scattered remnant would wither. But I was watching my signal bank, and I want to tell you what I saw, because this is where the story stops being a war story and becomes something else. The empty human worlds weren't silent. They were transmitting. Every hollow city, every dark station, every abandoned rock we passed, they were all broadcasting the same signal on the same frequency. A slow, steady pulse. Over and over. I couldn't translate it at first. It wasn't language, it was just a rhythm, a heartbeat of noise threading through the whole system. And then 3 worlds in, the pulse changed, and I understood. It was a countdown. The humans hadn't fled. They'd set a trap across their entire solar system, and every world we passed was a marker in it, and the pulse was counting down to something, and we were sailing straight into the center of it as fast as our engines could carry us. I ran to the command deck. I told the officer of the watch. I told him the whole system was one machine and we were inside it and the countdown was almost done. He said, "Countdown to what?" And that's the moment. That's the exact moment. Because as he said it, my translator finally cracked the last of the human message on the wideband. The one they'd been repeating since we crossed into their system, the calm voice, the warning. The full message, not just turn around and no one has to die. There was more, a second part we hadn't decoded until now. It said, "You think you're the hunters. Every species that ever came here thought that. Ask them where they are now. Oh, that's right, you can't. Welcome to Earth's system. You're the 8th. None of the others made it home either. The 8th. We were the 8th fleet to come and try to end humanity. And we were about to learn what happened to the first 7. Here's a thing about my people you should understand. The Vornaki are old. We had crossed the deep dark for 1,000 years before the humans ever left their moon. In all that time, in all those wars, we had learned one iron rule, the rule every young species eventually learns if it survives long enough. The galaxy is not empty, and it is not kind. We thought we knew that rule better than anyone. We thought we were the unkindness. We were the thing in the dark that younger species feared. But we had made an error, a simple, fatal error. We had looked at the humans, at their soft bodies and their squabbling and their tiny, slow ships, and we had assumed that because they were young, they were weak. We forgot to ask the only question that matters. We forgot to ask, if this world is so rich, so blue, so full of water, so perfect, why has no one taken it already? 7 fleets had asked that question the hard way before us. We were about to ask it the same way. The countdown ended when we were 3 days' flight from Earth. I was at my signal bank. I remember the exact instant because the pulse that had been threading through the whole system, the slow heartbeat of noise, suddenly stopped. Total silence on every channel, the kind of silence that presses on your ear plates. And then the system woke up. I don't have the words for what happened next. I've told this story 100 times in my life and I've never found the words, but I'll try. The empty worlds we'd passed, the dark cities, the hollow stations, they hadn't been abandoned. They'd been loaded. Every one of them was a weapon, and every one of them fired at once, and they fired not at us but at the space around us, and the space itself came apart. You have to understand how the deep fold works to understand what they did. When a fleet travels the deep fold routes, it doesn't move through normal space. It folds the dark, slips between the folds and comes out somewhere else. It's how we crossed to their system in 11 weeks instead of 11,000 years. The humans had figured out the fold, and they'd learned to break it. The whole inner system convulsed. The stars smeared. Space folded where it shouldn't and tore where it should have held. Half our fleet, 300 ships, the void carriers, most of the siege spheres, half our fleet was in the middle of a fold transit when the humans ripped the fold open around them. I won't tell you what happens to a ship caught in a collapsing fold. I saw it happen to 300 of them at once. I'll only say that there was no wreckage. There was nothing to bury. They were there, and then the space that held them ceased to be space, and then they were not anywhere at all. 300 ships, half of us, gone in a single breath and not one shot fired at them. The humans hadn't even needed to aim. The command deck was chaos. The warden was screaming for status reports. Ships were signaling panic across every channel. And through it all, on the wideband, that calm human voice came back on and it said one word. Turn. Just turn around. We warned you, turn. The warden gave the order to press on. I've hated her for that order for my whole life. Half the fleet dead, the trap sprung, the enemy holding a weapon that broke the fundamental architecture of the void, and she gave the order to press on. Because she would not believe that a young species, a soft species, had beaten the 9th Deep Void Armada. Her pride would not let her turn, and so 300 more of us followed her toward Earth. I followed her. I want you to know that. I couldn't have done anything. I was a signal keeper. But I've asked myself 1,000 times whether I should have tried, and I never have an answer. So I follow her in the story the way I followed her then. We ran for Earth. Whatever waited there, we would meet it head on. The last 3 days were the strangest of my life. The humans didn't attack again. After the fold breaking, after they'd cut our fleet in half without firing a weapon we could even see, they went quiet. No more traps, no more transmissions. Just 300 wounded Vornaki ships limping toward a blue world that grew larger in our viewports every hour, and a silence so complete it felt like the whole system was holding its breath. The crews were broken. You can't lose half a fleet in a single moment and stay whole. Men who'd been laughing and singing 11 weeks ago now sat at their stations with dead eyes. Nobody made jokes about the humans anymore. Nobody looked at the pictures of their soft bodies and their too flat faces. The word human had stopped being funny. I kept listening on the wideband. I don't know what I was hoping to hear. Another warning maybe, a demand for surrender, something I could bring to the command deck, some reason to turn, but the humans said nothing. And then on the second day I heard them again, not a message to us this time. They weren't talking to us at all. They'd stopped bothering with us. It was the humans talking to each other. Their fleet, the fleet that had been hidden this whole time, the fleet that had emptied their worlds and armed the traps, their fleet was gathering above Earth. And they were coordinating on open channels, casual, unhurried, the way you'd hear workers chatter on a job they'd done 100 times before. That's the thing that finally broke my nerve. Not the fold weapon, not the 300 lost ships, it was the boredom in their voices. They talked about us, about the greatest war fleet my species had ever built, about the 9th Deep Void Armada that had ended 100 worlds, the way farmers talk about a pest they've dealt with every season for years. Routine, tired, a little annoyed at the extra work. One of them, I remember, said something my translator rendered as, "Eighth one this decade. You think word would get around?" And another answered, "Word gets around. They just don't believe it. Nobody ever believes it until they're here." That was us. We were the ones who didn't believe it. I finally understood the thing I'd felt looking at those city lights all those weeks ago. The awe. All those lives, all those lights, all that wanting and fearing and loving, I'd thought it was a weakness. All those things to lose, all those things to fear losing. I had it exactly backwards. It wasn't weakness. It was the reason they would never, ever stop. We reached Earth on the third day. I will tell you what I saw, and you will not believe me, and I don't blame you. I was there, and I don't believe me. The human fleet was waiting for us in high orbit, and here is the thing that finished us before a shot was fired. It was small. Their fleet was smaller than ours. Even cut in half, even broken, we still outnumbered them, outgunned them, outmassed them. Their ships were crude next to ours, patched, mismatched, some of them clearly rebuilt from wreckage. There were maybe 200 of them against our 300. By every measure we understood, we should have won. We understood the wrong measures. The warden, I'll give her this, tried to make a fight of it. She ordered the attack. The siege spheres we had left, we had 3. Out of the dozen we'd started with, the spheres opened their great firing apertures and began to charge the crust crackers, the weapons that could split a planet. And the humans didn't try to stop the spheres. They didn't shield Earth. They didn't beg. They did something none of us expected, something so simple and so terrible that I still dream about it. They got out of the way. Their whole fleet just parted, slid aside, opened a clear lane between our siege spheres and the blue world behind them, as if to say, "Go on then, try, we'll wait." And the warden in her pride took the bait. She ordered the spheres to fire on Earth. Do you know what happens when you try to crack a world that spent 1,000 years learning to be uncrackable? The humans had done something to their own planet, to the world itself. When the crust crackers fired those weapons that had split 100 worlds like fruit, the beams hit Earth's high atmosphere and simply stopped. Something up there caught the energy of 3 siege spheres, the energy that should have boiled their oceans, and it drank it down like it was nothing. The whole sky over the impact zone lit up in a shell of light and held and did not break. They had turned their own atmosphere into armor. And then that armor gave the energy back. I don't fully understand the physics even now. Our engineers spent years afterward trying to reconstruct it and never fully could. But what I saw was this. The energy of 3 siege spheres, caught and stored and reflected, came back up out of Earth's sky in a single lance of light, and it found the spheres that had fired it, and it unmade them. 3 siege spheres, our last 3, gone. We had come to boil their oceans, and they had used our own weapons to boil us instead. After that, it wasn't a battle, it was a lesson. The humans came off the top of their world like a tide. 200 crude, patched, mismatched ships, and they moved together in a way our fleet, for all our discipline, all our 1,000 years of warcraft, had never once managed. They didn't fight like a fleet. They fought like a single living thing, like a body, every ship a limb, moving without orders, anticipating, flowing. Later I understood why. Their ships were linked, mind to mind, machine to machine, some kind of shared awareness that let 200 crews act as one crew. We fought as 300 separate ships, each waiting for the warden's word. They fought as one animal with 200 hands. They took us apart. Not cruelly. That's the part I can never make anyone understand. There was no cruelty in it. They didn't gloat, they didn't torture, they didn't drag it out. They came through our formation like surgeons, and every ship they touched, they disabled engines, weapons, sensors, and moved on. They weren't trying to kill us. They were trying to stop us. They only killed when they had to. When a Vornaki ship kept firing, kept trying to reach Earth, kept refusing to yield, then and only then did they finish it. And even then it was quick. A single, clean, merciful shot. No suffering. They were better at killing than we were, and the proof of it was how little of it they chose to do. Ship by ship, the 9th Deep Void Armada went dark. Not destroyed, silenced. 300 proud war vessels drifting powerless in the dark above a blue world, their crews alive, their weapons cold, utterly and completely beaten. The flagship was among the last. I felt the ship shudder as they took our engines, then our weapons. Then, one by one, our systems went dark, until the only thing left running on the whole vessel was my signal bank, because a signal bank is not a weapon, and the humans, it turned out, wanted us to be able to hear. Because they had something to say. The wideband lit up one final time. It was the same voice, the calm one, the one that had warned us at the edge of the system 3 days and 300,000 lives ago. I recognized it the way you recognize a voice you've heard in a nightmare. It said, "This is Earth. To the fleet that came to end us, you're beaten. Your engines are cold. Your weapons are dead. You are entirely in our hands. And now you're going to listen, because we are very tired of having this conversation, and we would like, for once, for the message to actually get home." The warden tried to answer, tried to make some final defiant speech. Her voice came over the internal channels, ragged, broken, still refusing to yield. But the humans weren't talking to her. They weren't talking to any of the officers. They'd routed their transmission straight to the general channels, to every surviving crew member, to every ordinary soldier like me, because they'd figured out something about us that our own warden never had. They knew that the ordinary soldiers were the ones who'd carry the message home. The voice went on, and I'm going to give it to you as close to word for word as I can, because I've carried it in me my whole life, and when I die it dies with me unless I give it to someone else. It said, "We know why you came. You came because you're dying, and we have water and living worlds and everything a dying people wants. We understand. We're not even angry. If we were in your place, maybe we'd have come too. So we're not going to lecture you about right and wrong. We're just going to tell you the truth, and then we're going to send you home. You are not the first. You're the 8th fleet to come here to end us. The first came before some of you were born. They were bigger than you, stronger, more sure. They're gone. So are the 6 after them. We didn't beat them because we're better warriors than you. We're not. We didn't beat them because we're smarter or older or stronger. You're all of those things. We beat them for one reason, and it's the reason we'll beat the 9th and the 10th and every fleet that ever comes after. This is our home. That's all. That's the whole secret. You came a long way to take something from us, and you found out the one thing nobody out there in the dark seems to understand until it's too late. There is nothing in this universe more dangerous than a species defending the only home it has. You fight for empire, for resources, for pride. You fight because you were ordered to. We fight because behind us is everything, every child, every grave, every light in every window on the dark side of this world. You saw those lights, didn't you? On your way in, everyone does. You looked at all those lights and you thought, so much to lose, they must be so afraid. We're not afraid, we're just not going to lose. There was a pause, and then softer, almost gentle. Go home, Vornaki. Take your beaten ships and your broken fleet and go home. And when you get there, tell them. Tell everyone. Tell them what happens to the ones who come for Earth. Not because we want your fear, we don't. Because we are so tired of watching young species throw their fleets into the fire, and we would very much like it to stop. Tell them we don't want your worlds. Tell them we don't want your empire. Tell them the only thing under this sky that we will ever fight for is the ground we're standing on. And tell them that we'll always, always be enough. Now go, while we're still in the mood to let you. They let one ship go. One. Out of 600 that sailed from the home fleet anchorage, out of the finest war fleet my species ever built, the humans repaired the engines of a single vessel and pointed it back toward the deep fold roots and let it limp home. It was the flagship, and the reason they chose the flagship, I think the reason they chose us, is that they wanted the warden to carry the message herself. They wanted the one who gave the order to be the one who had to explain what happened to everyone she'd led into the dark. But the warden didn't carry it home. She was found in her quarters 3 weeks into the return journey by her own hand. I won't say more than that. Whatever pride had driven her to press on after losing half the fleet, that same pride could not survive being sent home alive by the enemy she'd come to erase as a messenger. She could take defeat. She could not take mercy. There is a lesson in that too, but it's a dark one, and I'll let you find it yourself. So it fell to the rest of us. The signal keepers and the deck crews and the ordinary soldiers, the ones the humans had known would carry it. We brought the flagship home across 11 weeks of silence, 300 empty stations for everyone that was crewed, and we carried the message. And when we reached the home fleet anchorage, when the Ascendancy sent out its welcome ships expecting to greet the conquerors of Earth and found instead a single broken vessel crewed by ghosts, we told them. We told them everything. They didn't believe us at first. Of course they didn't. The war priest said we were cowards, that we'd fled the battle and invented the story to hide our shame. They said no soft young species could have done what we described. They said we disgraced the 9th deep void and the memory of the 400,000 who died. So the Ascendancy did the only thing a proud, dying empire knows how to do. They built a 9th fleet. They built it bigger than the 8th. They spent the last of our world's strength on it. They swore that this time, with more ships and more weapons and no mercy, they would finish what the 9th deep void failed to do. I begged them not to. I stood before the War Council, a signal keeper nobody, a survivor they half believed was a coward, and I told them again, slowly, everything I'd seen. The empty worlds, the broken fold, the atmosphere that drank 3 siege spheres and gave them back, the 200 crewed ships that moved like one body, the calm, bored voices talking about us like a pest they dealt with every season. I told them the one thing that mattered, the thing the humans had told me to tell them. This is their home, and there is nothing more dangerous than a species defending the only home it has. The War Council thanked me for my testimony, and then they sent the 9th fleet anyway. It never came back. Not one ship, not one messenger, not one word. The humans, it seems, had grown tired of sending survivors, or maybe the 9th fleet simply refused to yield the way we had, and so the humans gave them the only other thing they had to give. I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the whole point of a fleet that never comes back. It takes its story with it into the dark. After that, the Ascendancy stopped building fleets. Not because they'd learned wisdom. My people never learned wisdom. We're too proud for it. But you can't send fleets you don't have, and after the 8th and the 9th, we didn't have them anymore. We'd spent ourselves on Earth. We'd poured 1,000 years of warcraft into that blue world sky, and Earth had swallowed all of it and not even noticed. The dying empire went on dying, but it did it quietly now. It did it far, far away from the world called Earth. So that's why the old ones lower their voices when they say the word. Not out of hatred. We stopped hating the humans a long time ago. You can't hate something that beat you so completely it didn't even bother to be cruel about it. It's not hatred in those lowered voices. It's respect. The kind of respect you only ever feel for the thing that showed you exactly how small you were. You'll go out into the dark someday, young one, your generation or your children's. And out there you'll hear the old stories, the warnings the species pass to each other across the deep. You'll hear about worlds you can take and worlds you can't. And somewhere in those stories, told in lowered voices around 100 different fires on 100 different worlds, you'll hear about a small blue planet, wrapped in cloud, drowning in water, defended by a soft young species that has never once, not once, in all the fleets that came for it, lost. And when you hear it, you'll want to test it. Every species does. The young always think they'll be the exception. We did. So let me give you the same thing the humans gave me. Not fear. They never wanted our fear. Just the truth, so that when your turn comes to stand before some war council with a fleet at its back and a hunger in its eyes, you can stand up, the way I stood up, and say, I knew one of the ones who came back. There was only one. Let me tell you what he told me. Don't go to Earth. You will not be the exception. Nothing that goes for their home ever comes back, because behind those people is every light in every window, every grave and every cradle, every single thing a living thing can love. And a fleet, however great, is only a fleet. But a home is the most dangerous thing in the universe. We sent our strongest fleet to prove otherwise. It never came back. And now you know why.